The Dharma, incomparably profound and exquisite, is rarely met with even in hundreds of thousands of millions of kalpas. We now can see it, hear it, accept and hold it. May we realize the true mind of the Tathagata. Today is the fourth day of this 7-day sesshin here at Mountain Gate in northern New Mexico in June 2021. And the fourth day often brings with it a couple of things. One can be a sense of deeper ongoing practice that we have weathered the first 3 days where it's been more challenging, particularly if we haven't been to sesshin in a little while. And now finally on the fourth day, things are getting rolling. But there's also a danger in that we will subtly diminish our level of practice, let's put it that way. Well, we don't want to strive in practice. We don't want to go, as Hakuin used to say, with tongue pressed against palate and your fingernails digging into your palms. That got him into a place of nervous sickness, and it's not particularly healthy. It can get one into a kensho, but that kensho is sort of artificially produced and is somewhat tenuous because it hasn't been accomplished with the groundwork laid necessary to support it. And that is why it's not important to try to count days in terms of how long you've been practicing, or months or years, because as long as you're practicing, something positive is happening. I should say, as long as you're practicing with a level of commitment, clarity, and effort, and this effortless effort. In other words, you're not doing that fingernail into the palms striving, but you are focusing deeply within in a relaxed body and going deeper into your practice. And I'd like to share a little bit from Hakuin about this. This is from Ortegama Zokushu, and it's a letter and answer to the question, which is superior, the koan or the nembutsu? The nembutsu is Namo Amida Butsu, calling the name of Amida Buddha in hopes of becoming reborn in the Pure Land. And here's what Hakuin says. In your recent letter, you ask whether the calling of the Buddha's name is of any help to continuous and uninterrupted true meditation, and whether the calling of the name is one with the meditation on Joshu's Mu. Your kind letter inquires whether there are any particular deficiencies in either of the two methods. When you kill a man, is it the same thing if you kill him with a sword or with a spear? Or are there any particular drawbacks in the two methods? How does one answer that question? Certainly, the sword and spear are two different weapons. Yet, can we call the killing itself two things? In the past, Tadanobu used a chessboard to pursue an enemy. Shinosuke ripped loose a board from a ship's deck and used it to bait someone. The Empress Liu used a poison wine to kill the Zhao King Liu Ju-yi. Xuan Wu unfastened a lute string and used it to garrote a lady of pleasure. Good heavens. Guan Yu brandished the dragon sword, and Zhuangzi took up the viper club. The sword and the spear are two, but the duality lies only in the skill or clumsiness, the honesty or dishonesty of the person who wields them. So, of course, these are metaphors for practice. If we are deeply committed to the practice, whatever the practice is. It can be calling who. So long as there is that sense of needing to know who, that openness to possibility. The same way with a koan, a different kind of koan, the sound of one hand, our face before our parents were born, Joshu's Mu, or the advanced koans for that matter as well, or extending the out breath, or shikantaza. These are all various different methods of practice offered through Zen training. And it depends, as Hakuin is trying to express, on the person involved, their level of commitment, and a willingness to go forward. He continues. Say there are two men whose strength and physical makeup are the same. Each is equipped with strong armor and sharp weapons, and they engage each other in battle. Yet, one does not possess a strong determination. He doubts and he fears. He doesn't know whether to fight or to run away. He cannot decide whether to live or to die, whether to advance or to retreat. His eyes waver, his footwork is unsteady. Confused, he does not know what to do. The other does not consider danger. And this is another aspect that is very important in Zen practice, because we can have this idea that if we stay up late, it's going to be terrible. It may or may not be. And if we stay up late and involve ourselves in deep concentration with our koan, there's very little energy expended, and there's very little danger of negative effects. In fact, there's every opportunity for positive effects. And this also applies to the fact that as we go deeper in our practice, we get a little bit too close for comfort, to letting go. And it can feel like we're going to die. And the fear can come up. To walk right into that fear, to walk right into that apparent danger, which is really just a story. It's the danger of letting go all the ideas about who we are, the self-image that covers up the true reality of this amazing beingness of the universe that we really are. Continuing. The other does not consider danger. It matters not who is strong and who is weak. His whole body is concentrated, his eyes fixed, his teeth gritted. Well, here is Hakuin. And with valiant spirit, he presses forward. Which man will win is as obvious as the palm of your hand. It is perfectly clear that no matter what odds he encountered, the second man would win every time. Suppose two armies were facing each other. One army has 100,000 troops, all mercenaries, paid with gold and silver. The other has but 1,000 men, trained in virtue and loyalty, their determination wedded with benevolence. To set these 1,000 men against the 100,000 men would be like loosing a fierce tiger against a flock of sheep. It all comes down to the worthiness or lack of worth of the generals in command. What can differences in strength or the amount of weapons possibly have to do with it? The same applies to concentrated meditation. Supposing you have one man who is occupied with the koan of Joshu's Mu, and another who devotes himself exclusively to the calling of the Buddha's name. If the meditation of the former is not pure, if his determination is not firm, even if he devotes himself to the koan for 10 or 20 years, he will gain no benefit whatsoever. The man who calls the Buddha's name, on the other hand, should he call it with complete concentration and undiluted purity? Should he neither concern himself with the filthy mundane world nor seek the Pure Land, but proceed determinedly without retrogression, he will, before 10 days have passed, gain the benefits of samadhi, produce the wisdom of the Buddha, and achieve the great matter of salvation in the very place he stands. And you heard earlier in these teishos how important samadhi is, how really it's a prerequisite for awakening. And how do we reach samadhi? We do it through focus, commitment, concentration, attention, and awareness, no matter what happens. And in our practice, of course, we go through easier and more difficult periods of time. There are times, particularly in the earlier years, where our concentration seems to be vanishing as we think about it. And so it goes with the ability to have a clear mind to focus. It seems like we're plagued by a million thoughts, flying around by makyo, by all kinds of attempts to distract. But if we proceed with diligence, with commitment, with single-minded intention to follow through, gradually increasing our level of attention and awareness through practice, we will gradually enter samadhi. And as we keep going deeper, keep letting go, transformation can happen. Suddenly there will be an insight that will make a difference. Most of us start Zen practice with great enthusiasm. And we jump in. It's kind of exciting to learn how to do this new thing called Zen, which has been quite spoken about and highly regarded, to the point where its advertisements are filled with Zen this and then Zen that. In the days when Roshi Kepler would give workshops every month, he had a whole collection of things that were trying to seem important and worthy through adopting the name Zen. There was Zen software for computers in the early days. There was Zen perfume, Zen this, Zen that, Zen all kinds of things, because it seemed like Zen was such a catchword that people would be drawn to it and buy whatever the product was that seemed to emulate Zen. And even now it's entered the lexicon of the American English as a verb and an adjective. Do you feel Zen? You know, Zen out means to calm down, be focused, be cool. But then something happens. We get into it, and for some rare people, the commitment sticks, and we gradually go deeper and deeper in practice despite the obstacles. For most of the rest of us, it's an ongoing challenge, and we wax and we wane. And we get discouraged when we can't even remember what the heck the koan was we were supposed to be working on, as happened in my early years. We get all kinds of mind states during practice, particularly during concentrated practice of sesshin. But persistence is vital. Determination is vital. Quiet, deep determination. It's like the turtle and the hare. The turtle, one step after the other, never straying from the path, slowly reaches the goal. The hare jumps around, bounds here and there, gets distracted by all kinds of things, feels like, okay, he's head of the turtle now, so he can stop by and take a nap. And then the turtle quietly goes by, and the rabbit wakes up and he's behind. And so he dashes forward again. And unfortunately, I was a rabbit in my early years of practice, but gradually we learn. And as we persist, even sporadically, if we persist, we begin to see results. What is salvation? It all comes down to the one thing: seeing into your own nature. The sutra states the vow: until all those who repeat my name 10 times in their desire to be born in my land are born there, I shall not accept true enlightenment. And that's an adaptation from the Buddha Amida's universal vow. Where is my land? Is it not the innate self-nature with which you yourself are endowed, standing right and clear before your eyes? If you're not seen into your own nature, it will not be easy for you to see this land. Yet nowadays, those who practice the Pure Land teaching recite the name daily 1,000 times, 10,000 times, 1,000,000 times, but not one of them has determined the great matter of salvation. Don't they realize that Amida Buddha refused to accept true enlightenment? Still more, didn't they realize that one instant of thought is this very paradise of salvation? Why wait then for 10 repetitions of the name? Now that's an interesting set of comments, because what is entailed in the practice of the Nembutsu is focus and concentration. Irregardless of what one thinks Buddha Amida thought or said, faith is important. Faith in the koan is important. Faith in the practice is important. Whether we're working on a koan, whether we're working on extending the out breath and opening to what might reveal itself through that process, which is actually what we're doing, whether we're working on a koan or not, whether we are, doing the Nembutsu is really about focusing to the point of getting into samadhi and becoming so one with Namu Amida Butsu that who we think we are disappears. And when who we think we are disappears, who we assume we are disappears, we are open to the possibility of finding the truth. Who are we really? This is the fundamental question that, whether you're working on koans or whatever you're working on in your practice, is seeking to answer. Because we are all creatures of conditioning. We are all acting in ways driven by that conditioning, consciously or unconsciously. We are pretty much all of us trying to be the very best people we can and struggling with it. And we're struggling with it because we don't know really who we are. And to let go who we think we are, which again is a scary proposition, we can realize who we really are. And when we realize who we really are, we step out of the trench that limits our experience, our behavior, because we're no longer attached to a self-image that put us in that trench and limited our experience and our behavior. And now suddenly we have freedom to respond to circumstances rather than react out of our conditioning. And it changes things for the better. Of course, karma still enters in. And if there's past negative karma, it may be mitigated to a certain degree by our awakening, but it may not be eliminated. So sometimes we have to pay a price. But when we come at that from an enlightened point of view, it is so different from if it happens while we are still caught in conditioning. So basically, what's important is focus, awareness, concentration, commitment, and faith that we can uncover this amazingness, this incredible beyond wordsness that we are. As we begin to fall asleep at night, and again, as we begin to wake up in the morning, there is a brief period where we are not, it's like we haven't put on the clothes of our self-image yet. And so the mind is able to reach a deeper place. It's a more open space in which we can stay present to great benefit. And within that presence, to offer up that need to know, that curiosity, that openness to possibility, to stay present with that as much as possible. It will make a difference. And in that way, your practice will go deeper as well. So this is basically the fundamental way to practice. There's not a lot more that can be said about it, really. The most important thing is to do it, because the rewards are infinite. It is very much worth it, no matter how much challenge, how much pain, how much you have to go through to reach it. And of course, speaking of pain, certain body postures for Westerners are not necessarily the most optimal postures to be in. They can be, because they create a very grounded form through which to practice. And since mind and body are not separate, when our body is settled and stable, as it is in the traditional positions, seated positions, it is easier to do the practice. However, it is possible to do it under any kinds of conditions. I think here of Yaiko Iwasaki, who the young girl in Japan decades ago, who was inspired by her father's taking up Zazen. He had discovered a fear of death when he turned 60 and started doing Zazen. And after a year had a Kensho experience, which says something about his level of commitment. And she, inspired by his practice, took up the practice of Zazen as well. For her, it was perhaps a little bit more urgent in that she had TB. Tuberculosis was something that ravaged the Japanese population over centuries until antibiotics came about and were able to cure it. Japan is a very damp and in winter very cold country. And when you combine dampness and cold, it without any heat, by the way, it makes it difficult to keep the body healthy. So there were many Japanese that suffered from tuberculosis, and it became kind of a scourge, and it became similar to leprosy and in terms of the relationship with other human beings. People were scorned. People were avoided when they had TB. Of course, TB is contagious. So there was some reason for that. But at any rate, Yaiko Iwasaki got TB, and she actually died of it. And her practice was severely limited by her physical condition. In the later stages of TB, one is coughing up blood. One is in pain and fever. It's very difficult to sit upright in a cross-legged position or seiza when one is exhausted from the illness. And so very likely she spent the last weeks of her life practicing lying down. And yet, Mitra-roshi, who apparently visited her, wrote that every single day she had a deeper kensho in the last 3 weeks of her life. And as she died, he wrote that he had never seen anything so peaceful as that death. So against great odds, extreme pain, racking coughing, severe illness, fever, this woman had profound awakening experiences, day after day after day, going deeper. So in that sense, our level of commitment is what is most vital in this. And whatever position our body is able to take in terms of the traditional positions, physical positions, or sitting in a chair, or if we are reduced to that, lying down, we can come to awakening. It's been demonstrated. So there really are no obstacles to practice except what we create here. Of course, that said, it's not as easy to recognize that and to overcome them. It takes determination, practice, commitment, and faith that one can overcome these obstacles and one can emerge free, truly free. Along the way, as we are taking whatever amount of time it takes, even if it takes 20, 30, 40, 50 years to have a Kensho experience, as long as we are working with that determination, commitment, faith, this groundwork is being laid. And what is also going on at the same time is what is known as the long maturation, which does not depend on having a Kensho experience. The long maturation takes place as we begin to, as Shunryu Suzuki wrote in Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind, witness mind weeds, he called them, in our practice. And that's these unpleasant mind states, difficult memories, some of which are quite clear and make us recognize that maybe we weren't as wonderful as we would like to have felt we were. And now is the chance to do something about that, to change, to move in more positive directions, to let go negative behavior patterns. He calls them mind weeds, and he says you can turn them into the soil, turn them into manure to fertilize your practice. And that's exactly what can happen. As we see more and more clearly the motivation can definitely arise to want to see more and more clearly and to become ever more free. And gradually enough is let go of that this pristine awareness of no self can arise suddenly, unexpectedly, without warning, seemingly. One person at Sesshin in Rochester had been going fairly deep, but there were some family issues that were plaguing her before she went into that particular Sesshin. And she was struggling with these as she's going day after day in the Sesshin. And somewhere around the 5th day, she is at the student bell, about to ring the bell to go into Doksan. And all of a sudden, these family situation comes up in spades. And here she is about to go into Doksan, when one would prefer to have a clear mind and therefore gain greater benefit from the Doksan. Here she was with all this stuff flying around in her head. And the Roshi rang his bell, and she rang the student bell, and she walked into Doksan and had a Kensho experience. You never know when it's going to hit. And that's why it's so important not to give up when it seems like things are not as seemingly optimal as they might have been a few minutes or a few days ago. Trust that the practice is working. And often when it feels worse is when it's most effective to go deeper. So don't give up. We have 3 more days of this Sesshin, and you've already worked this far. You can go that much deeper, even in that little time, even if you're coming in late to Sesshin. Depending on your level of commitment, presence, awareness, readiness to practice deeply, regardless of all obstacles, it's amazing what you can accomplish. So that's enough. I thank you for listening. I'll stop now and recite the 4 vows. And of course, we have a fair amount of time left in the sitting before it ends.